The gavel was ready to fall. In a packed New York courtroom, billionaire Julian Thorne smirked at his wife of 25 years, Eleonora. He had the press, the power, and a hotshot lawyer ready to kick her to the curb with pennies. He'd already replaced her in his bed and on the society pages with a 22-year-old model. The judge, tired of the spectacle, was about to sign the papers, leaving Eleonora with nothing but her name. But the judge wasn't ready. The lawyer wasn't ready. And the billionaire certainly wasn't ready for Eleonora to pull out a single, faded document, a document that would not just cost him his money, but his entire $10 billion empire. The penthouse on Central Park West wasn't a home. It was a fortress of glass and silence, hovering 40 stories above the city that Julian Thorne believed he owned. For 25 years, Eleonora Thorne had curated this silence, turning a cold architectural space into a home, then a showpiece, and finally, a prison. The walls were adorned with art Julian had purchased but never looked at, a towering, Gerhard Richter, blurred cityscape that reflected Eleonora's own life, a Jeff Koons balloon dog that seemed to mock her with its empty, metallic cheer. Julian Thorne was a man who consumed. He consumed companies, he consumed headlines, and most recently, he consumed Chloe Vance. The divorce wasn't a surprise. The way it was delivered was. Not by Julian, but by a process server who had handed Eleonora the papers as she exited her car from a charity luncheon. The irreconcilable differences were splashed across page 6 of the New York Post the next morning. Julian and Chloe, 22, wrapped around each other on a yacht in St. Bart's. The headline read, "Thorne Trades Up." Julian, founder and CEO of the logistics behemoth Thorne Dynamics, was worth an estimated $10 billion. His offer to the woman who had been with him since he was sleeping on a futon in a Queens walk-up? A one-time payment of $50 million. "Oh, it's more money than you could ever spend, Ellie," he had told her. Not in person, but over a crackling phone line from his jet. He hadn't bothered to come home. "Take the deal. It's generous. Don't make this ugly." Eleonora sat in their marble-clad living room, the divorce papers on the glass coffee table, and looked at her reflection in the dark city window. She was 52, elegant, and had been systematically erased for the last decade. He called $50 million half of 1% of their joint assets. Generous. He called her Ellie, a name he hadn't used since he'd made his first billion. It was the name he used when he wanted something. "I won't be taking the deal, Julian," she said, her voice quiet but void of the tremor he expected. The line was silent for a beat. Then, the familiar, cold rage. "Don't be a fool, Eleonora. Don't. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I will bury you. I'll tie this up in court until you're destitute. I'll paint you as a bitter, dried-up shrew. You contributed nothing. You spent my money. That's all. Take the $50 million, or I swear to God you will walk away with absolutely nothing." The line clicked dead. Eleonora didn't cry. Instead, she picked up her phone and made her own call. "Anya, it's Eleonora Thorne. He served the papers. Yes, he said I contributed nothing." Anya Sharma, a partner at a small, ferocious boutique law firm, was the opposite of Julian's legal team. She didn't have a skyscraper office. She had a team of forensic accountants who were, as she put it, part shark, part bloodhound. "He said that, did he?" Anya's voice was sharp. "Well, that's the narrative. Rick Sterling will try to paint you as a trophy wife who did nothing but lunch and shop. Our job is to prove that Thorne Dynamics wouldn't exist without you." "He's right in a way," Eleonora said, tracing the marble grain on the table. "I haven't been in the office in 15 years. But you were there for the first 10, Anya countered. You were there when it was just a business plan on a napkin. And more importantly, you were there when he signed the venture capital agreements, weren't you? A memory flickered in Eleonora's mind. A cramped, overheated office, a pushy VC, Julian sweating in a cheap suit, and a stack of papers. Yes, Eleonora said, a new cold resolve settling into her bones. Yes, I was. Good, Anya said, because Julian's lawyer, Mr. Sterling, just filed a motion for a summary judgment based on his settlement offer. He claims there are no joint assets to divide, only his assets. He's claiming no prenuptial agreement exists. He's right about that part, Eleonora said. We never signed one. Are you sure? Anya asked, a strange insistence in her voice. Think very hard, Eleonora. 1995, just before the wedding, just before the first round of funding. Are you positive nothing was signed? Eleonora closed her eyes. The heat, the anxiety, the desperation. Julian's hand, shaking as he held a pen. My God, Eleonora whispered. There was a document. The investor, he insisted. He said he wouldn't fund a startup run by a man who could lose half of it in a divorce a year later. Julian was furious. He signed it. We both did. He said he'd have it deep-sixed by his lawyer as soon as the money cleared. He must have assumed you forgot, Anya finished, or that it was truly gone. Eleonora, where is that document? I don't know, Eleonora said, her heart suddenly pounding. It was with our lawyer then, Arthur Galloway. But Arthur, he died a decade ago. Then we have work to do, Anya said. The hearing is in 2 weeks. Julian and his shark, Rick Sterling, are expecting you to crumble. We are not going to crumble. We are going to dig. The New York County Supreme Court building on Center Street was a monument to solemnity, its cavernous hallways echoing with the quiet anxieties of 1,000 domestic wars. Courtroom 312 was packed. The press, sensing blood, filled the back benches. Chloe Vance was in the front row, seated just behind Julian, wearing a demure black dress that cost more than a teacher's monthly salary. Her presence was a calculated insult, a declaration of victory. Julian Thorne sat at the defendant's table, flanked by a trio of lawyers from Cravath, Swain and Moore. His lead counsel, Richard Rick Sterling, was the picture of corporate lethality. Silver hair, a $10,000 suit, and a crocodile leather briefcase. He radiated an aura of expensive, inevitable victory. At the other table sat Eleonora, poised and still in a simple navy blue suit, and her lawyer, Anya Sharma. They looked, as Sterling had intended, like a rowboat next to his battleship. All rise. Judge Evelyn Hayes entered. She was a woman in her late 60s with a reputation for suffering no fools, especially not the billionaire class who treated her courtroom as a temporary inconvenience. She looked over the packed room, her eyes lingering for a moment on Chloe, and her lips thinned in disapproval. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice like gravel. I've read your motion for summary dissolution. You're claiming your client's offer of $50 million is beyond generous, and that Mrs. Thorne is acting in bad faith by refusing it. Sterling rose, a smooth, practiced smile on his face. Your Honor, that is correct. Mr. Thorne built Thorne Dynamics from scratch. He is a titan of industry. Mrs. Thorne, while a lovely woman and the mother of his children, who are, I might add, well provided for, has not been employed by the company, or any company, for over 2 decades. Her contribution to the marital assets was, respectfully, non-existent. She was, for all intents and purposes, a homemaker. He said homemaker, as if it were a dirty word. My client, Sterling continued, in a show of good faith, has offered $50 million. This is not a community property state, Your Honor. What he built is his. Mrs. Thorne is attempting to leverage a 25-year marriage into a lottery win. It's textbook. We are asking the court to accept the settlement and finalize the divorce so the parties may move on. Judge Hayes looked at Anya Sharma. Ms. Sharma, is your client a lottery player? Anya stood. She was smaller than Sterling, but her voice filled the room. No, Your Honor. My client is not a lottery player. She was the co-founder. Mr. Sterling's narrative is a fiction, designed to erase my client's history. A murmur went through the crowd. Julian Thorne scoffed, loud enough for the judge to hear. Mr. Thorne, you will be silent, Judge Hayes snapped. Continue, Ms. Sharma. Mr. Sterling paints a picture of a titan who did this all himself, Anya said, walking toward the judge. The reality is that in 1995, Julian Thorne was a man with a concept, and Eleonora Thorne was the one with the MBA and the strategy. The original business plan for Thorne Dynamics, the one that secured their first seed funding? It was co-authored, the core logistics algorithm that Thorne Dynamics is built on. It was based on her graduate thesis. Julian Thorne's face, which had been a mask of bored arrogance, flickered. He leaned over and hissed something to Sterling. Sterling, rattled for a split second, recovered. Your Honor, that is a creative and baseless assertion. Where is the proof? Is Mrs. Thorne's name on the incorporation papers as an officer? No. Is it on the patents? No. This is a desperate fantasy. It's not a fantasy, Your Honor, Anya said, her voice steady. It's a fact. And it's a fact that was codified in a legally binding document that Mr. Thorne has conveniently forgotten. Objection, Sterling shouted. Ms. Sharma is alluding to a document that doesn't exist. There is no prenuptial agreement. We have stipulated this. We stipulated no such thing, Anya countered. We stipulated that we had not yet located it. Your Honor, Mr. Thorne's entire case rests on the idea that no such agreement exists. He's so confident of this that he's willing to perjure himself. Careful, Ms. Sharma, Judge Hayes warned. Mr. Thorne, Anya said, turning to him, do you maintain, under oath, that you and Eleonora Thorne never signed a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement of any kind? Julian, radiating contempt, stood up. Sterling tried to pull him down, but Julian waved him off. I'll answer her. Yes. I maintain that. We never signed one. Ever. We were in love. We didn't need one. This is a lie, a fabrication, a desperate, pathetic attempt to steal my money. Eleonora watched him. The man she once loved, the man she had built a life with, was lying so smoothly, so completely, under oath, in a federal building. The last ember of affection she held for him died in that moment. Judge Hayes looked at Anya. Ms. Sharma, you've heard the testimony. You are making an extraordinary claim. If you have this document, you had better produce it. Otherwise, I am leaning toward Mr. Sterling's motion. I am not going to let this court be used for a fishing expedition. The courtroom was dead silent. Rick Sterling smiled. He had her. She had nothing. Mr. Sterling is correct, Anya said. Such a document, it would be hard to find, especially if one party had spent the last 25 years believing it was destroyed. It was destroyed, Julian snapped, then immediately paled. The courtroom's silence deepened. Judge Hayes's eyes narrowed on Julian. Mr. Thorne, how would you know a document was destroyed if, as you just testified, it never existed? Rick Sterling dropped his head into his hands. It was the single biggest unforced error he'd ever seen. Julian scrambled. I mean, I assume it would have been. If it had, I would have. It's hypothetical. This is ridiculous. She has nothing." Anya Sharma turned and walked back to her table. Eleonora opened her briefcase and handed her a single, slim file. "Your Honor," Anya said, her voice cutting through the tension. "What if it wasn't destroyed? What if it was just lost? And what if, just this week, it was found?" Anya walked to the clerk and handed over the file. "I would like to submit into evidence this document, a prenuptial agreement signed by Julian Thorne and Eleonora Varsi, now Thorne, dated August 14th, 1995. The year was 1995. The apartment in Astoria, Queens was suffocatingly hot. The window AC unit rattled, spitting out lukewarm air that did nothing to cool the panic in the room. Julian Thorne, then 28, was pacing. His cheap suit was already dark with sweat under the arms. "He can't do this to me, Ellie. He can't!" Julian fumed, running his hands through his hair. "We have the code. We have the business plan. The money is on the table." Eleonora, 27, was at their second-hand desk, reviewing the term sheet for the 5th time. "He can do it, Julian. It's his money. Mr. Harrison, at Vanguard Capital, is a shark. He's not wrong. From his perspective, we're getting married in 2 weeks. He's investing $2 million in you. He doesn't want to wake up in a year and find out Thorne Dynamics is half owned by a disgruntled ex-wife in a messy divorce." "But you're not." Julian knelt in front of her. "You're my partner. We're in this together." "He doesn't see together," Eleonora said, her voice firm. "He sees risk. And he's not the only one. My father said the same thing." Julian's face darkened. "Your father's money is a different story. That was a gift." "It wasn't a gift, Julian. It was my inheritance. And it's what we've been living on while you coded this thing," Eleonora shot back, the stress making her sharp. "All $100,000 of it. That's gone. This $2 million is the next step. If Harrison wants a document, we give him a document." "A prenup," Julian spat the word. "It's an insult. It's as good as saying you expect us to fail. It's as good as saying we're smart enough to protect the asset," Eleonora said. She had drafted the counter-proposal herself. The investors had been impressed with her grasp of corporate structure. Julian, she realized, had been annoyed by it. Their lawyer, Arthur Galloway, a kind, plodding man who mostly handled wills and estates, had been flustered by the request. "It's very aggressive, this clause, Eleonora. Are you sure?" Eleonora had insisted. She knew her worth. And she knew Julian. She knew his charm, and she knew his ambition, which was a hunger so vast it terrified her at times. "Yes, Arthur, I'm sure." The clause was her own invention. It wasn't a simple 50-50 split. Julian had argued that if they divorced, he should keep 100% of the company, as it was his idea. Eleonora had agreed, with one caveat. The document, which Arthur Galloway had typed up on his IBM Selectric, stated that in the event of a no-fault divorce, the assets would be split, but Julian would retain his full 100% of the company shares. Eleonora would get the house and a standard alimony package. But she had added a specific loyalty clause. It stated that if the marriage was dissolved as a direct result of proven marital infidelity on Julian's part, the entire agreement was void. It was what came after that that mattered. A second clause, an addendum insisted upon by Eleonora, and grudgingly accepted by Julian in his desperation for the $2 million, stated, "In recognition of Eleonora Varsi's foundational contribution to the company's core intellectual property, specifically the Helios logistics algorithm, derived from her graduate thesis, a stake of 49% of Thorne Dynamics, then operating as Thorne Logistics Systems, shall be held in a passive, non-voting trust for her benefit." In the event the aforementioned loyalty clause is breached by Julian Thorne, this 49% stake will immediately become active, convertible and voting. Furthermore, an additional 2% of Julian Thorne's primary shares shall be transferred to Eleonora Varsi, granting her a controlling interest of 51%. "It's a poison pill, Ellie," Julian had raged. "You're holding a gun to my head." "No," Eleonora had said, her voice quiet. "I'm putting a gun in my own hand just in case. You're asking me to sign away my rights to the algorithm I wrote. This is my only insurance. If you never cheat on me, Julian, this clause never matters. It's just words on paper. It stays 100% yours. It's your choice." Desperate, panicked, and with the VC's deadline looming, Julian had signed it. In Arthur Galloway's dusty office on August 14, 1995, they both signed. Julian, Eleonora, and Arthur as the witness. "I'll have this shredded the second the money clears, you know," Julian had muttered as they left the office. "It's filed with the court, Julian," Arthur had called after them, "and Mr. Harrison's team has a copy." "Lawyers can be bought, Arthur," Julian had yelled back. Eleonora had felt a chill, even in the August heat. Now, 25 years later, that chill returned in the refrigerated air of the courtroom. The clerk handed the document to Judge Hayes. The judge put on her reading glasses and began to read. The courtroom was so quiet, the only sound was the rustle of the thick, aged paper. Rick Sterling looked like he'd swallowed a wasp. He strode to the bench. "Your Honor, permission to approach and to examine this document?" "Permission granted, Mr. Sterling. Ms. Sharma, please join him." The two lawyers flanked the judge. Julian Thorne was bolt upright in his chair, his knuckles white as he gripped the table. Sterling looked at the document. He scanned the first page, then the second. His eyes widened slightly when he reached the addendum. He visibly recoiled. "Your Honor!" Sterling's voice was suddenly an octave higher. This is an outrage. It's an absurdity." "It looks like a binding legal contract to me, Mr. Sterling," Judge Hayes said, her face impassive. "It's a forgery," Sterling announced, turning to the courtroom. "A clear and desperate forgery. Look at it. The signature. It's a passable attempt, but it's a fake. This is a fabrication of the highest order. This is fraud." Julian Thorne visibly relaxed. Of course, it was a fake. Eleonora had finally cracked. She'd had someone draw this up. He was safe. He almost smiled. "Ms. Sharma," Julian roared from his seat, "you should be disbarred for this. And you," he pointed a shaking finger at Eleonora, "I will have you arrested. Mr. Thorne, you will sit down and be silent, or I will have you removed." Judge Hayes slammed her gavel. "This is your final warning." She turned her steely gaze to Anya. "Ms. Sharma, you have just been accused of presenting a fraudulent document to this court. Mr. Sterling claims the signature is a forgery. This is the most serious allegation one can make against an officer of the court. How do you respond?" Anya Sharma nodded, calm as a lake surface. "I expected this response, Your Honor. Mr. Thorne and his counsel have built their entire case on the non-existence of this document. Now that it exists, their only possible defense is to claim it's a fake." "It is a fake," Sterling insisted. "We will bring in our own handwriting experts. This will be torn to shreds in 5 minutes." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Sterling," Anya said. "We already brought ours." She gestured to the back of the courtroom. "We call Dr. Anne Linwood, forensic document examiner, to the stand." A woman with a severe black bob and sharp, intelligent eyes walked forward to be sworn in. Rick Sterling's confidence began to visibly crumble. This was not a last-minute trick. This was a planned execution. "Furthermore, Your Honor," Anya continued, "Mr. Sterling is correct about one thing. The document I handed you, It is a fake. The courtroom gasped. Judge Hayes stared at Anya. Ms. Sharma, what game are you playing? I'm not playing a game, Your Honor. I'm demonstrating a pattern of behavior. The document you hold in your hand is a high-quality, meticulously crafted forgery. Julian Thorne burst out laughing. She admits it. She's insane. It's over. Anya waited for him to finish. I had it created myself, Your Honor, for a very specific purpose. I wanted to see, on the record and under oath, what Mr. Thorne's reaction would be. Would he say, I don't remember signing that? Would he say, that clause is different from what I remember? No. He and his lawyer, without a moment's hesitation, identified it as a forgery, because they knew the original had been destroyed. He knew what the signature was supposed to look like, and he was so confident the real one was gone that any version that surfaced must be a fake. Judge Hayes was furious. You presented a known forgery to this court. Ms. Sharma, I am this close to holding you in contempt. I presented it as evidence of my opponent's mindset, Your Honor, and I did it to prove that his immediate, violent denial was not based on unfamiliarity, but on a belief in the document's permanent destruction. This is a circus, Sterling yelled. But it raises a question, doesn't it? Anya said, her voice dropping, drawing everyone in. How did Mr. Thorne and Mr. Sterling know the original was destroyed? Julian's face was ashen. He had walked right into it. Because he destroyed it himself, Eleonora Thorne said, her first words in the courtroom. Her voice, though quiet, was so cold and clear it cut through every other sound. Or rather, he paid someone to. Your Honor, Anya said, now that we have established Mr. Thorne's mens rea, his guilty knowledge, I would like to present the actual prenuptial agreement. She turned to Eleonora. Eleonora reached into her briefcase again and pulled out a second file. This one was different. It was in a sealed, archival-grade plastic sleeve. The paper inside was yellowed, the typewritten font slightly faded. The signature at the bottom, in blue ink, was unmistakable. Anya Sharma took the file and placed it on the bench in front of Judge Hayes. This one, Your Honor, Anya said, is not a forgery, and we have the expert, Dr. Linwood, here to prove it. And more importantly, we have the story of how we found it. The hunt had begun 3 weeks ago. After Eleonora's call, Anya Sharma had hired the best private investigator in New York, a man named Milo Petrovich. He was a former NYPD detective who specialized in finding things that had been professionally disappeared. Arthur Galloway, Milo said, reading the file in Anya's office. Died 2011, heart attack. His practice was bought by a larger firm, which then merged twice. His files are, well, they're probably digital dust. No, Eleonora insisted. Arthur wasn't digital, he was paper. He kept everything. He had rows and rows of grey filing cabinets. He was old school. Old school is good, Milo grunted. It means a physical trail. The trail led them to a storage facility in Long Island City, Queens, tucked under an elevated train line. The merged firm had dumped all the dead files from their acquisitions into the cheapest possible storage, Unit 3B. The manager, a man vaping thick, sweet-smelling clouds, checked his records. Unit 3B. Yeah, that was part of the '09 flood. Down in the sublevel. We had a pipe burst. Total loss. Everything in those units was declared destroyed. Insurance paid out. Eleonora's heart sank. Destroyed. Julian, she whispered. It's too convenient. A pipe burst. Milo looked at the manager. We need to see it. It's a hazmat zone, lady. Black mold. Trust me, you don't. Milo flashed his PI badge, which looked official enough. We need to see it. 10 minutes later, they were in the dark, damp sub-level, wearing N95 masks. The smell of mildew and rot was overwhelming. The metal door of Unit 3B was rusted at the bottom. The manager pried it open with a crowbar. Inside was a graveyard of paper. Dozens of cardboard file boxes had collapsed into a sodden, mouldy pulp. The filing cabinets Arthur Galloway had loved were rusted shut. "It's over," Eleonora said, tears welling in her eyes. "He won. He really did destroy it." Milo, however, was scanning the wreckage with a high-powered flashlight. "Not so fast. This is sloppy." "Sloppy?" Eleonora asked. "It looks pretty total to me." "No," Milo said, pointing his light at one of the rusted cabinets. "Look at the lock. It's not just rusted. It's been drilled. And this one," he moved to another. "The drawer is slightly ajar, but the rust has sealed it. Someone was here before the flood, or maybe they caused the flood." He shone the light on the wall. "See that pipe? That's a clean break, almost surgical. This wasn't an accident, Mrs. Thorne. This was a professional cleansing. Your husband's fixer came here, found what he was looking for, and then destroyed the rest to cover his tracks." Eleonora felt sick. The cold, calculated cruelty of it. To not just steal the document, but to destroy a man's entire life's work, all of Arthur's files, just to hide his own. "So it is gone," she said. "The official copy is," Milo said. "The one from the office. But you said Arthur was old school. A guy like that. He doesn't just keep one copy of a document that important. He has a personal file, a just-in-case file." "Where did he live?" The trail led them to a nursing home in Westchester. Arthur's widow, Mrs. Beatrice Galloway, was 89 and suffering from dementia, but her eyes were clear when Eleonora introduced herself. "Eleonora Varsi," Beatrice said, her voice a papery rustle. "My goodness, you were Arthur's big one. The case he was so proud of." He was?" Eleonora asked, surprised. "Oh yes, he said you were the smartest client he ever had. She put a poison pill in that contract, B, he told me. A little landmine for that arrogant young man. He always worried about you." Hope, sharp and painful, pierced Eleonora's chest. "Mrs. Galloway, Julian is divorcing me. He's lying to the court. He says that contract never existed. The copy at the office, it was destroyed." Beatrice's hazy look sharpened. The fog of her illness seemed to clear for a moment, replaced by an old, familiar indignation. "He destroyed it? That monster, after Arthur? No!" She gripped Eleonora's hand. "No, Arthur, he was careful. He was so careful. B, where is his personal safe?" Eleonora asked gently. "The house, it's still there. My son keeps it. The safe is in the study, behind the bookshelf. Shakespeare." Milo and Eleonora were at the house an hour later. The son let them in. They found the safe. Milo, using a stethoscope, worked the combination Beatrice had given them. It clicked open. Inside, beneath stacks of savings bonds and old passports, was a single manila envelope. On it, in Arthur's spidery handwriting, it said, "Thorne, J&E, 995, personal, do not destroy." But when Eleonora opened it, her blood ran cold. It wasn't the original, it was a photocopy. A very clear, very sharp photocopy, but still a copy. Stapled to it was a notarized affidavit from Arthur, dated the day after the signing, affirming that this was a true and accurate copy of the original. "It's not the original," Eleonora said, her voice breaking. "It's just a copy. Sterling will tear it apart. He'll say the original was different. He'll say this is the forgery." "It's a start," Milo said. "It's certified. It's something." Anya Sharma had been disappointed, but firmed up. This is what we use to create the fake original. We'll use this to spring the trap. But we still need the real one. There's one more person who would have a copy. The person who demanded it in the first place. Mr. Harrison, the venture capitalist. It took Anya's team 2 days to find him. James Harrison was 78, retired and living in Naples, Florida. Eleonora called him herself. "Mrs. Thorne," he said, his voice still booming. "I wondered if I'd ever get this call. I saw your husband in the paper with that child. Disgusting. I assume you're calling about the poison pill agreement?" Eleonora was stunned. You remember it?" "Remember it?" Harrison laughed. "My dear, I've used that Varsi clause as a template in 3 other founder agreements since. It was brilliant. And yes, I kept a copy. The original copy, in fact. My lawyers insisted. Your husband's lawyer, some slick fellow, tried to retrieve it from me about 10 years ago. Said it was for a corporate archive. I told him to pound sand. I never trust a man who sweats that much in a $5,000 suit. He had sent it via secured courier. It arrived at Anya's office the morning of the hearing. Back in the courtroom, the air was electric. Judge Hayes was holding the certified copy that Eleonora and Milo had found in Arthur's safe. "So this is the copy?" Judge Hayes asked Anya. "Yes, Your Honor. The one we retrieved from the deceased lawyer's personal safe." "Now, Mr. Sterling," Anya said, turning to the defense table, "you've had a moment. Do you also claim this certified copy is a forgery?" Rick Sterling was sweating. He saw the trap. If he said it was a forgery, and it was later proven real, his credibility was shot. If he said it was real, he admitted the document's existence. It's inadmissible," Sterling stammered. "It's a copy. It's hearsay. The original document is what matters, and it's non-existent. For all we know, the parties mutually agreed to destroy the original, voiding all copies." "A fine theory," Anya said. "But let's talk about the signature. Dr. Linwood, you've had a chance to examine this certified copy, as well as several other samples of Mr. Thorne's signature from that same time period." Dr. Linwood adjusted her microphone. "I have. I compared the signature on this 1995 copy to Mr. Thorne's signature on the Thorne Dynamics Incorporation papers, filed the same week, and his 1995 passport application." A large screen flickered to life, showing the signatures side by side. Mr. Thorne's signature, then and now, has several unique identifiers, Dr. Linwood explained, using a laser pointer. The hard, downward cross of the T, the specific, broken loop in his J, the way the N in Thorne flattens at the end. They are identical. The signature on this certified copy was, without question, made by the same hand as the man who signed the incorporation papers. Sterling stood. "Your Honor, this is all moot. It's a copy. It proves nothing. Where is the original?" "It's a fair question," Anya said, turning to him. "You keep asking for the original. You seem obsessed with it. It's almost as if you know the original was stolen from Arthur Galloway's files and subsequently destroyed. That is baseless and slanderous," Sterling roared. "Is it?" Anya walked slowly toward the defense table. "Or is it just sloppy? You see, Mr. Sterling, the fixer your client hired to cleanse Mr. Galloway's files. He made a mistake. He took the file and he destroyed the storage unit. He was very thorough. But he wasn't the only one with a copy. He wasn't even the only one with an original." Julian Thorne, who had been muttering to Sterling, looked up, his eyes wide with a new, dawning horror. "As Dr. Linwood has testified, the signature on the copy is real," Anya announced. "But we can do one better. Your Honor, I would like to submit the original." She produced the file that James Harrison had couriered, the one in the archival sleeve. This is the original, wet ink counterpart, kept not by the lawyer, but by the primary investor, Mr. James Harrison of Vanguard Capital, who demanded its creation, Anya said. He was kind enough to send it to us, along with a sworn affidavit as to its authenticity and an account of Mr. Thorne's legal team attempting to retrieve it a decade ago. Anya Sharma handed the original pristine document to the clerk, who handed it to Judge Hayes. Judge Hayes looked at the document. She compared it to the copy. She looked at the signatures. Julian Thorne made a sound like a deflating balloon. Rick Sterling just slowly, methodically, sat down in his chair. He began packing his briefcase. He knew, as did everyone in the room, that the war was over. "My God," Julian whispered. "Harrison. He kept it." "He did," Eleonora said, looking at him for the first time. Her eyes were not fiery. They were ice. "He trusted you about as much as I did." "Your Honor," Sterling said, his voice a hoarse whisper. We will need a recess to review this new evidence." "You will not," Judge Hayes said, her voice booming with sudden, final authority. "You have spent this entire hearing claiming a document does not exist. It clearly does. You have claimed it is a forgery. My preliminary examination, coupled with expert testimony regarding the copy, suggests it is authentic. The chain of custody is impeccable. This document is entered into evidence. And its terms," she looked down at the addendum, "are staggering." She looked at Anya. "Ms. Sharma, the infidelity clause, you have proof?" Anya nodded. "We do, Your Honor. We have volumes." She gestured to a box Milo Petrovich had just wheeled into the room. "Private investigator reports, credit card statements from Mr. Thorne's personal accounts, not corporate, detailing expenditures for Miss Chloe Vance, including jewelry, rent on a Park Avenue apartment, and the yacht in St. Bart's. The same photographs that appeared in the New York Post." In the front row, Chloe Vance, who had been looking at her phone, suddenly realized the cameras in the room were turning toward her. The billionaire's smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of greenish-white terror. She saw her future, the mansions, the jets, the producer credit on a film, evaporate. She quietly stood up and, ignoring the cameras, slipped out of the courtroom door. Julian didn't even notice. He was staring at the prenup in the judge's hand, as if it were a bomb. The courtroom had become a vacuum. The collective gasp had sucked all the air from the room, leaving behind a silence so profound it was almost violent. In the back, a journalist's smartphone slipped from their hand and clattered to the marble floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Judge Evelyn Hayes peered over her glasses, first at the ashen-faced Julian Thorne, then at the rigid, vibrating form of Rick Sterling. Sterling, a man who charged $2,000 an hour, a man whose silver-tongued arrogance had disemboweled opponents for 3 decades, was staring at the document in the judge's hand as if it were a cobra poised to strike. He was grey. He looked, for the first time in his life, utterly and completely defeated. "Mr. Sterling," Judge Hayes said, her voice quiet but carrying to every corner, "you have based your entire case on the non-existence of this agreement. You have accused opposing counsel of fraud. You have watched your client, under oath, commit perjury. Do you have anything at all to say about this document, the original wet ink counterpart provided by the original investor?" Sterling opened his mouth. A small, dry, croaking sound came out. He swallowed. He looked at his junior partners, who were already trying to slide their legal pads into their briefcases without being noticed. He looked at his client, his eyes filled with a new, undisguised contempt. He had been lied to, not by the opposition, in a brilliant legal maneuver, but by his own client. He had been made a fool. "No, Your Honor," Sterling managed, his voice a hoarse whisper. "We have nothing further at this time." "I see," Judge Hayes said. She stacked the papers on her desk with a terrifying, methodical precision. "Then let us review what we have." She stood, a signal that what was coming was not a ruling, but a judgment. "We have a divorce proceeding, initiated by Mr. Thorne. We have a $10 billion estate, the Thorne Dynamics empire. We have a settlement offer for $50 million, which Mr. Sterling, in his motion, called beyond generous, and which this court now calls insulting. We have this offer based on the central, foundational claim that Mrs. Eleanora Thorne was a homemaker who contributed nothing to the marital assets." She paused, letting the word nothing hang in the air. "This court has heard testimony, however, that Ms. Varsi, then Mrs. Thorne, was the co-author of the original business plan. That the core intellectual property, the very algorithm that Thorne Dynamics is built upon, was derived from her graduate thesis, and that her personal inheritance provided the seed money for this venture." She picked up the prenup, and now we have this. A binding prenuptial agreement, signed by both parties, the authenticity of which is no longer in dispute, an agreement demanded by the company's first major investor, who, it seems, was wiser than anyone else in this room, as he kept an original copy safe from cleansing. Her eyes bored into Julian. "Mr. Thorne, you testified, under oath, that this document never existed. Your counsel then immediately identified a high-quality forgery of it as a forgery, proving not that it didn't exist, but that you knew exactly what the real one looked like, and were so confident it was destroyed that any other version must be fake. You have perjured yourself, sir. Willfully and flagrantly." She turned her gaze to Sterling. "And you, Mr. Sterling, you have either been complicit in an attempt to defraud this court, or you are the most spectacularly incompetent lawyer to ever pass the New York bar. I will be reviewing the transcripts and filing a formal complaint with the disciplinary committee myself." Sterling physically recoiled as if struck. His career, his reputation, was evaporating in real time. "And this document," the judge continued, her voice rising, "contains two clauses of remarkable importance. First, a loyalty clause, which voids Mr. Thorne's primary asset protection in the event of his proven marital infidelity. Ms. Sharma," she nodded to Anya, "has provided this court with a veritable mountain of evidence proving that breach. Sordid, sad, and conclusive." She put her reading glasses on one last time. "And this leads us to the addendum, the poison pill. I will read it into the record." She read the words slowly, each one a hammer blow. "In recognition of Eleanora Varsi's foundational contribution, a stake of 49% shall be held in a passive, non-voting trust. In the event the aforementioned loyalty clause is breached by Julian Thorne, this 49% stake will immediately become active, convertible and voting." The courtroom held its breath. "Furthermore, an additional 2% of Julian Thorne's primary shares shall be transferred to Eleanora Varsi, granting her a controlling interest of 51%. The detonation was absolute. The press in the back exploded. It wasn't a murmur, it was a roar. Reporters were literally climbing over the benches to get to the doors, screaming into their phones. 51%. She gets the company. She gets the whole thing. Julian Thorne, who had been shrinking in his chair, finally snapped. The narcissistic shell cracked, and the terrified hollow man inside came screaming out. "No!" It was not a word, but a primal shriek of loss. He leaped to his feet, his expensive chair crashing backward onto the marble. His face was a mask of puce-colored rage, his eyes wild. "No, you can't! That's illegal! It's theft! That old bastard Harrison! He had no right! It was a copy!" He turned. His shaking finger pointed not at the judge, but at Eleonora. You bitch! You planned this! You snake! All these years, 25 years, you sat in my house, eating my food, spending my money, wearing my name, just waiting for me to make one mistake. He scrambled around the table, his high-priced lawyers flinching away from him as if he were diseased. He was babbling, his voice cracking. Your Honor! Your Honor! Look at her! She's a black widow. She let me do it. She wanted this. She never said anything. She never cried. She just watched. This is entrapment. This is fraud. This... He was losing his mind, live, in front of the world's media. He turned back to Eleonora, his eyes pleading, then hardening with hate. It's my company. I built it. Me, with my hands. I worked 100-hour weeks. I bled for that company while you shopped, while you went to luncheons. You did nothing. You contributed nothing. He had defaulted to his original, fatal lie. The courtroom was silent, save for his ragged breathing. Every camera, every eye was on Eleonora. She rose from her chair, not with anger, but with a terrifying, glacial calm. She was no longer the defendant. She was the executioner. She looked at this trembling, screaming man, the man she had once loved, the man who had erased her, and she felt nothing but a cold, final pity. "You are confusing my dignity with weakness, Julian," she said. Her voice, though quiet, was so clear it sliced through the tension. "You have been for decades. You say I did nothing? You seem to have forgotten. I was the one who kept you from financial ruin in 1998, when your day trading hobby almost bankrupted us. I was the one who rewrote your entire Series B funding proposal, the one you had botched the night before the meeting. I was the one who hosted the dinners, charmed the investors, secured the political allies, and raised your children, all while you took the credit and the bows." She took a step toward him. He involuntarily took a step back. "You say I set you up? You are a 60-year-old man, Julian, not a wayward boy. I did not let you do anything. You made a choice. You chose to surround yourself with sycophants who told you you were a god. You chose to break the one promise that mattered. You chose to replace me with a 22-year-old. And you chose to serve me divorce papers through a process server like I was a stranger. You say I waited," she continued, her voice dropping. "You're wrong. I prepared. I prepared for this day. I prepared for the day your monumental arrogance would finally and completely eclipse your intellect. I prayed this day would never come. I prayed that this document," she pointed to the bench, "would be nothing but yellowed paper in a vault, a relic of a fear that was never realized. I hoped you would be the man I married. But you are not. You are a greedy, hollow shell, and you, Julian, are the sole architect of your own destruction." She turned from him, dismissing him, and faced the judge. "I did not plan this, Your Honor. I insured against it, and the policy just came due." The courtroom was stunned. Julian Thorne had no response. He just stood there, his mouth open, his hands limp at his sides. He was broken. Judge Hayes looked at him, her face a mask of stone. She nodded once to Eleonora. "Order," she barked, though the room was already silent. "Order in this court." She sat down and spoke the final words. "This court finds the prenuptial agreement dated August 14th, 1995, to be valid, binding, and fully enforceable. Mr. Thorne's motion for a summary judgment on his $50 million offer is denied with extreme prejudice. Ms. Varsi's motion to enforce the terms of said agreement is granted. Per the explicit, unambiguous terms of the contract, which was triggered by Mr. Thorne's proven and admitted infidelity, the 49% of all shares in Thorne Dynamics held in trust will be immediately activated and transferred to Ms. Eleonora Varsi. An additional 2% of Mr. Thorne's personal controlling shares shall also be transferred, effectuating a 51% controlling interest in the company. She looked directly at Julian, her voice laced with ice. Let me be unequivocally clear, Mr. Thorne, in case you are still confused. You did not just lose a divorce case. You have, by your own hand, your own signature, and your own actions, just lost your company. You are no longer the CEO. You are no longer the chairman. As of this moment, you are no longer the controlling shareholder of Thorne Dynamics. Ms. Varsi is, Julian whispered, his voice a dry rattle. This isn't over. I'll appeal. My lawyers. Oh yes, Mr. Thorne, Judge Hayes said, cutting him off. It is. You can appeal this from a rented apartment. This hearing is adjourned. She slammed the gavel. The sound was final. The room erupted. Julian Thorne, the Titan, the billionaire, simply collapsed. He didn't faint. He folded in on himself, slumping into the chair his lawyer had set upright, a vacant, hollowed-out man. Rick Sterling didn't even look at him. He snapped his briefcase shut and, without a single word to his former client, walked stiffly out of the courtroom, his juniors scattering behind him. Eleonora Varsi, her hands perfectly steady, picked up her bag. She turned to Anya Sharma, who was weeping with silent, triumphant tears. Eleonora put a hand on her arm. Anya, thank you. We did it, Eleonora, Anya whispered back. We actually did it. No, Eleonora corrected, her gaze firm. We corrected it. She and Anya bypassed the side doors. They were not hiding. They walked straight down the center aisle, toward the main entrance, where the roar of the global media was waiting. The doors burst open. It was a wall of light and sound. Flashes strobed, turning the midday into a blinding, chaotic twilight. Microphones were shoved in her face. Eleonora! Eleonora! How does it feel? Ms. Varsi, you're the new CEO of a $10 billion company. What's your first move? Are you going to fire Julian? What about Chloe Vance? Do you have a message for the mistress? Ms. Varsi, you're the richest woman in America. What will you do now? Anya and a security guard cleared a path. Eleonora was an island of absolute calm in this hurricane. She did not flinch. She did not rush. She walked with purpose to the top of the grand marble steps, the same steps she had been dragged up as a victim. She paused, looking out over the sea of cameras, the very same media that had gleefully printed "Thorne Trades Up" just weeks before. She saw a reporter from the New York Post, the one who had broken the original story, shoving his microphone forward. She motioned to him. The crowd surged, then silenced, straining to hear her first words as a titan. Eleonora Vehas leaned into the single microphone. Her voice was not loud, but it was so cold and clear it carried over the din of the city. There are a few corrections to the record, she stated. The crowd hushed. First, my name is not Mrs. Thorne. It is Ms. Varsi, Eleonora Varsi. Second, I am not overnight anything. This was 25 years in the making. And third, she looked directly into the camera, a gaze that felt as if it was aimed at Wall Street, at her former husband, at the entire world that had written her off for decades. I am not going on vacation. I am not having a celebratory lunch. I am going to the office. I have an emergency board meeting to call for 10 a.m. The reporter, stunned, stammered, But, Miss Varsi, what for? What's the first order of business? Eleonora allowed herself the smallest, most terrifying smile. Restructuring, she said. There are a number of redundancies to address, starting at the top. She turned, and the path cleared as if by magic. She walked down the steps, alone, got into the black town car that was waiting, and was gone, driving not to an empty penthouse, but to her new corporate headquarters, leaving the ruins of Julian Thorne's world and the entire media reeling in her wake. The empire Julian Thorne built on lies was shattered by a single promise he broke, a promise he made to the one person who knew him better than he knew himself. Eleonora Varsi didn't just win a divorce. She took back what was rightfully hers. She didn't just get a settlement. She got the entire company. But the story isn't over. What do you think Eleonora's first move as CEO should be? Should she fire everyone loyal to Julian? And what do you think happened to Chloe Vance, the mistress who slipped away when the money disappeared? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This is the kind of story we love to tell, where the truth, no matter how deeply buried, finally comes to light. If you loved this drama and want to see more real-life stories of shocking twists and ultimate reckonings, please hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see that justice can still be served, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click that notification bell so you never miss an update.